I want to start my presentation today with a quote that helps us think about why journalism is important for democracy. And the quote reads, "Democracies die in darkness. History proves that. And we think we're resilient. I think we are. We think we're strong. We think that we have a process that will protect us from that. But if we are infected with hate and infected with a lack of knowledge, we could partake in losing our wonderful democracy." Journalist Bob Woodward of Watergate fame said this back in 2017 about the Trump administration. And he was actually paraphrasing Damon J. Keith, a former judge of the US Court of Appeals for the Sixth Circuit, who in a 2002 case wrote, "Democracies die behind closed doors." So even though these words have been around for nearly 2 decades, they resonate today when we consider the relationship between journalism and democracy and the various challenges both face. Hi, everyone. It's great to be with you virtually today. My name is Dr. Jennifer Henrichsen, and I am an assistant professor at the Edward R. Murrow College of Communication at Washington State University. I'm also an affiliated fellow at Yale Law School's Information Society Project. My research broadly examines how a variety of challenges, from state surveillance to physical and digital attacks against the media, are creating an epistemic crisis for journalism. And this crisis throws into jeopardy the possibility of imagining a future that connects journalism and democracy in efficacious ways. Today, I'm going to talk to you about how journalism is under attack, why journalism is important for democracy, and the key concepts and principles for students aspiring to become journalists. So how and in what ways is journalism under attack? Violence toward journalists, including assault and murder, has been an ongoing threat for a number of years, with more than 1,400 journalists killed in response to their work since 1992. Journalists are harmed by state, non-state, and parastate actors for speaking truth to power and for uncovering abuses by powerful interests. Journalist safety and security is not only affiliated with physical harm, however, it's often linked to digital harassment and abuse. Journalists have experienced online monitoring or harassment before experiencing physical safety challenges. Online harassment of journalists is on the rise, with a recent Committee to Protect Journalists survey revealing that it's the biggest threat among 90% of the journalists surveyed. Digital harm can also result from phishing attacks, which are fake messages which contain a malicious link, such as when the Syrian Electronic Army successfully gained access to the AP's Twitter account by sending malware through a phishing email. Other times, news organizations are affected by distributed denial of service attacks, or DDoS, in which a newspaper or blogger's website is taken offline by overwhelming it with internet traffic. Digital harm can also occur through software or hardware exploits of a user's devices or networks, such as when the New York Times Moscow bureau was targeted by hackers. So these threats and attacks show how various actors aim to silence journalists for their reporting and for speaking truth to power, thereby limiting journalists' democratic role. But what about the responsibilities that journalists have to providing accurate information to the public? As a journalist, you have a responsibility to the public and to the craft of journalism to engage in ethical behavior. One way to do so is to follow the discipline of verification philosophy, described by Bill Kovac and Tom Rosenstiel in their book, The Elements of Journalism. The discipline of verification philosophy includes 5 main ideas, which form the basis of good reporting. The first principle is do not add. Do not add anything to the story that didn't happen. This includes not rearranging events in time or place or conflating individuals or events. The second principle is do not deceive. Don't mislead the audience. Doing so is a form of lying. If you engage in any narrative techniques that deviate from eyewitness reporting, the audience should know. For example, if a reporter reconstructs an event that they didn't witness, the audience needs to know that the event was reconstructed and that the event has been verified. A third principle is transparency. Be open and honest with audiences about what you know as a reporter and what you do not know. Share how you know what you know, who your sources are, how direct your source's knowledge is, whether there are conflicting accounts, and what remains unknown. As Kovac and Rosenstiel mention, transparency signals respect to the audience because it helps the audience judge the validity of the information, how the information was obtained, and any motives or biases of the individuals presenting or providing the information. In turn, it helps the audience know whether to trust the information. A fourth principle is rely on your own original reporting. We know that news publishing happens at a rapid pace, but as a reporter, you need to conduct your own reporting to make sure that the story is accurate, the sourcing is sound, and that the information came from multiple sources. When you engage in original reporting, it leads to deeper understanding and more accurate reporting. Finally, it's important to exercise humility. That means that as a journalist, you should remain skeptical of what you see and hear from others, but you also need to show modesty in your judgments to make sure that you truly understand what you think you hear or see. So in other words, you need to remain open-minded to information as you receive it and clarify it if you don't understand. You also need to be open to changing the story if the facts indicate the story is changing. So these 5 principles from Kovac and Rosenstiel underpin the discipline of verification philosophy in journalism. And this philosophy helps to ensure a scientific method of reporting that provides an opportunity for trust to grow between journalists and publics. Yet, it's important to add another technique that journalists can engage in to better mitigate an environment rife with misinformation and disinformation. One technique is to use a truth sandwich when reporting. A truth sandwich allows a journalist to provide the truth when dealing with a false claim. The truth sandwich contains 3 parts. First, when reporting on a false claim, such as a lie from a politician, start with the truth, because the first frame of information gets the advantage when an individual processes information. Second, indicate the lie, but avoid amplifying specific language if possible. And third, return to the truth to ensure that the truth will be repeated and not the lie. So let's look at an example of a truth sandwich. Now this is from Jay Rosen, a media scholar at NYU. In his example of a truth sandwich, he says, there's no clear evidence that hydroxychloroquine, an anti-malarial drug, protects against coronavirus. Donald Trump said today he's taking it, but his doctor would not confirm that. And medical experts have said it could have dangerous side effects. So as you see, Rosen starts with a truthful statement, places the misleading statement in the middle, and then ends with the truthful statement. And this process helps to ensure that the truth and not the misleading claim will be repeated. In our increasingly interconnected society, journalists are no longer the first gatekeepers of information for the public. Journalists sometimes have to operate as annotators because the public has already heard misinformation. Thus, journalists need to show and present the truth by annotating the falsehoods that they hear or see in a smart way, such as by using a truth sandwich. By doing so, journalists help to ensure an environment where truth and accuracy can flourish, and in turn, journalists are able to carry out their democratic role in society. As the journalist Walter Lippmann once said, there can be no liberty for a community which lacks the information by which to detect lies. It is thus important for journalists to provide accurate and trustworthy information to publics in order to carry out their democratic role. Thank you.